You're listening to the Staging Sips podcast with Lori Fisher. This podcast is dedicated to helping real estate staging CEOs build healthy businesses that grow, flow, and thrive. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm so happy to be with you this weekend, week, day, night, whenever you're listening. I'll tell you what, it has been a bananas week here at Rethink Home Interiors, and all for good stuff. And not even related to client delivery. We have actually continued to refine and dial in on processes and procedures. And so it's just felt like we have come through figuring out all kinds of things this week that like breakthroughs, lots of breakthroughs. So it's been really, really nice. But anyway, at the time of this recording, I am sitting here and we are in the heat of the spring market. Well, actually not heat. It's been freezing cold, at least here in the Philadelphia area. But what tends to happen at this time of year when people are starting to get busier and have more clients and likely bringing on new clients is that questions start to arise. And when questions start to arise, when you're in the process of selling your service, people go to our Facebook groups and start saying, sharing what questions are coming up, also sharing what logistics are coming up for them. And I just wanted to dive in today to the topic of questions and boundaries and client services and client experience, and hopefully help you navigate some of the questions that come up and how you can think about them from a global perspective as a business owner. So especially when you're in the newer stage of your business, you are onboarding new clients to you all the time. And likely some of these clients have either no experience with another staging company, or they have worked with another staging company that may have different operating procedures than yours. So I think this is really important to remember. So I want you to think about anybody who is new. Like I have had a couple of inquiries this week for our interior design services with people that have never worked with an interior designer. And they have a lot of questions about what it's like to work with an interior designer. So when we have new clients reaching out to us about staging who don't really know the process, they're likely to have a lot of questions. And I want us to just acknowledge this and understand this, that questions are going to arise, and they don't mean anything other than somebody is trying to do their due diligence and their fact finding. Sometimes when we are posed questions about our services, we can get our hackles up and a little defensive because we're not sure how to answer. We haven't maybe prepared. And sometimes they feel like they're questions that are devaluing us. And so I want to dive into that a little bit. And some specific questions that I've seen people, have pop up that we can address and answer. So, and also I want to remind you also to go back, podcast episode 5 about boundaries, has as another kind of complementary podcast to this episode, as is the episode number 6 about grounded communications. And in that grounded communications episode, there's a link to a communication sample responses document, like a communication template. And I'm going to put that link here today as well for kind of my library of questions that I see pop up in Facebook groups, as well as ones from my own business that we have addressed over the years. So if you're new to experiencing some of these questions, you can borrow from my experience of over a decade in business, how we respond to these things. So one of the questions that comes up is when people ask for a discount. This often happens when builders or investors, or realtors, they know they're going to give you repeat business, or they think they're going to give you repeat business. So they'll often ask if, because I'm going to send a lot of work your way, would you provide a discount? And the way that I always answer everything is, I'm so glad you asked that question. Like that little thing right there is such a bridge. It helps us calm our nervous systems, but it also says that their question is valid and we see it that way rather than being defensive. So I'm so glad you asked that question. Here's what I say next. As we actually help our clients make more money with what we do, we don't provide discounts for our services. Does that make sense? And I always say, does that make sense? Because they're never going to say no. We want them saying yes. Yes, that makes sense. And with an investor, certainly you could say, how about once we have 5 to 6 projects in the books, if it makes sense to do a discount, maybe we can talk about it at that point. And that just basically says to them, like, I'm willing to consider it, or maybe you're not, but if you want to consider it, let's get some projects under the belt first. Let's see what your volume is. Like, you bring your game. Right now you're all talk. And I don't know that you're actually going to bring me that much business. So that's how I always answer that question. I think it's super valid because, and also it comes up with, if we sell really quickly, do you discount the price? And again, it's kind of a riff on the theme, which is, I'm so glad you asked that question. Actually, that's why you're hiring us. So no, we wouldn't be giving you a discount at that point. Right. So it's really simple, and we don't need to be snarky, like, oh, you should give me a bonus. I see a lot of people saying that, yeah, maybe they should be, but I don't think we need to be snarky about it. We just need grounded, neutral communication, which again is episode 6, about how we can get into a space of grounded and neutral communication. The other question that can pop up is, why do we require payment in full upfront before staging day? And if you don't do that, that might be a policy you want to consider. And simply, I know for us, the reason why we implemented it was we really didn't want to be chasing money after the fact. We also wanted to have a clear sense that we were working on the project. We also wanted to be paid for team hours that were happening before installation. And because in our business, from the time a client agreement is signed, we have an installation date put on the calendar within 7 to 10 business days. In busier times, it could be 14 days. But because the turnaround time is so fast, it didn't make sense for us to say 50% now, 50% day or two before staging. I just didn't want that. I just didn't want the feeling of having to follow up and having to wonder, are they going to pay the remainder? I wanted it all up front. And honestly, that's extra bookkeeping and admin time and all of that when you start paying somebody to do it. So that's just a policy we like to have. And certainly people have said, what about taking payment at the time of closing? So I'll talk about that in a minute. But when a client asks about payment up front, I always say, again, I'm so glad that you asked that question. It's our policy to be paid upfront in full to reserve an installation day on the calendar. It's just an industry standard because, as you're probably aware, 90% of the work we have been contracted to do happens prior to installation day. And that's it. That's all you have to say. It doesn't have to be any deeper than that. It just helps people understand the process better. There's not a lot of visibility for anybody who's new to staging what that actually looks like. So then the other riff on the theme is, would you consider getting paid at the settlement table? And there are vehicles to do this. Certainly you can use something like Zoom Casa. You could also use PayPal. I forget what the name of it right now as I'm recording. But there's PayPal's way for you to get paid up front, but for the payment to be deferred. But what we say is, there are so many factors involved in a real estate transaction that are out of our control. You could get a multiple offer situation. You could accept an offer, and at inspection, things could fall through. And we've certainly had that happen. So, but we don't say that. We just simply say, because there are so many moving parts and pieces to the real estate transaction, involved in the marketing and sales and the accepting and moving forward of an agreement that we're not in control of, we need to be paid upfront for our services, because we've also paid our team as well to do all of that work for you. So in order to just have a good business practice, that's what we like to do. That's probably a little wordier, but you can keep it really simple and neutral and just, here are the facts. Here are the facts. The answer is no, but here are these other tools that we could explore if that's something you're interested in. You may also have clients who ask to choose the furniture. And that's also a question that somebody new is going to ask just so that they understand the process. And again, you simply say, I'm so glad you asked that question. Because our inventory is always in rotation, that really isn't possible. It's also what you're hiring us for. If you want to see our aesthetic, definitely check out our portfolio and tell them where that is. If you don't have a portfolio yet, that's okay. You don't need to direct them in that, send them in that direction, but you can simply say that's what you've hired us to do, is to help you style the spaces, choose that furniture based on what we know about our inventory. Years ago, I was working with a rental furniture company, and somebody asked that question, and I had said, because I had so much experience with that rental company, and I knew the quality of the pieces, because of course I had chosen poorly on occasion. I had said, it's really not possible, because I actually know really clearly the quality of the inventory. You're not necessarily going to know that as somebody new to choosing inventory. So I know what pieces are the best, the most stylish, that look good in person, that might look good online. Like, I've talked about all of that as well. So if you use a furniture rental company, that's something else that I say to those clients. If the client wants to share inspiration images with you about how they want that space to feel, I think that's actually, some people get upset by that. I actually like that. I don't encourage it, but if they do it, I just simply say, thanks so much for sharing these with me. I want to make sure we're a right fit. So the best thing you can do to see if we have the aesthetic you're looking for is to check out our portfolio. Again, if you don't have a portfolio, you don't need to say that. You can say, thank you so much for sharing these with me. This is really helpful to guide me to what you're interested in having the overall look be, period. Boom, the end. You don't need to do anything more than that. What if you get asked to enhance what another staging company did? So if, for example, a listing has expired, but there's staging in place, there's a new realtor, and maybe they work with you, I would say, thank you so much for, thinking of me for this. Unfortunately, enhancing staging provided by another staging firm is not something we can accomplish for you. We would be happy to restage for you if you decide, to first destage what you currently have. And would you be interested to see what that process looks like if there's somebody new to you? But it's never a good idea to enhance somebody else's staging, simply because it muddies the water from a business perspective. You want to make sure that it's very clear whose inventory is whose. There's all kinds of, I think business ethics that are involved. So these are likely some questions that you'll get asked. When clients request appointments for installation on evenings and weekends, this is another one that can tend to come up. And if you don't work on evenings and weekends, this is certainly a thing for you. If you work on evenings and weekends, great. Then this is not a problem for you. But for those of us who choose business hours that are weekdays, more typical 9 to 5 hours, this is a question that can come up, and, we just want to know how to handle it. So super easy again. That's a great question. Our team typically doesn't work on weekends or evenings, but we do love to accommodate you when these things occasionally pop up. That's the first thing you can say, especially to a repeat client. So we recently had a repeat client request a weekend day, and this is the response that we have. So we said, unfortunately, we don't have anyone available for the days that you've requested or the times that you've requested. Would X date and time work? And so what we did was we said our earliest available appointment is X And sure enough, that was totally fine. We have an East agent consultation in our business. So we also offered up in that case, because it was a consultation. Another option is if your client has difficulty meeting during the week, is the East agent consultation. And we offered that out. But if you're doing like a vacant stage, you would simply say, yes, we don't have anyone available, or we don't have the truck available until X day. It's so reasonable to say that, because this does two things. One, it gives you a boundary around your time, but also it's just a good business policy to not be at people's beck and call all the time, but also make it feel like you want to help them, right? So the thing is, we're all about, especially with our repeat clients, preserving a relationship and, letting them know that we want to accommodate them. We just can't accommodate them. And, like that is an important thing to share, because what can happen is if you're like, oh, sure, yeah, we can do that, because you want to be a great partner, it's going to happen again and again. So it can be a slippery slope. And if you don't want to be working those hours, it's fair and reasonable to just let them know you don't work those hours. But if it occasionally happens, you're, happy to do that. If a client requests a last minute installation. So we just got this request for a last minute installation actually yesterday. And unfortunately, we didn't have availability. We had people on the calendar already, and there was no way we could honor the appointment or try to make it work. So last minute request, our team would love to help you stage your property. And this is really for those of you who do vacant installations and occupied with inventory. We're happy to get you on the calendar as soon as possible, but we have to complete these steps first. And right now, our earliest installation date is, and tell them what that date is. Now, in our business, again, we like to say that from the time a person signs their client agreement, that it's 7 to 10 business days. So in the case of this person, we would say our earliest installation date is, I would give them 2 weeks out, because we want our clients to understand that we are busy. We are not sitting by the phone. We are not waiting to jump into action for them. Like we can't, right? We can't always. Sometimes we can, but we can't always. And so it's just good business practice for you to give yourself a boundary as well, and not to always be jumping. As I talked about in boundaries, you'll hear all about the story of my team member who wanted to quit because I had no boundaries about when we would do installations and appointments. We would jump all the time, and it kept us in a state of just stress all the time, adrenaline rush all the time, and kind of fight or flight. And that's not a really great way to run a business. The other thing is that if our agents know that we're busy, and that we want to accommodate them, but we're just busy, at this time of year, that's also not really a bad thing to show that we are in demand. We talk about this a lot. Inside Rethink You is that feeling of in demand, and how would you operate as a business owner when you're in demand? Well, when you're in demand, you're not doing an install tomorrow emergently, because likely you are already booked with other business and you have a lead time for these projects to be done. I know that in the real estate industry, we tend to think that we have to jump really quickly because everything feels like an emergency, and your clients will come to you and they will talk to you as though this is it's such an emergency. But I think that's part of the training that realtors get, because once a client agreement is signed, they have a contractual obligation to get the house on the market within a certain period of time. And they have, an end date to their client engagement with this particular seller. So there is the sense of urgency. But it doesn't have to happen right now. And we know, of course, when we get our hands on a project with a client, that they're going to, even if it's just a consultation, they're going to get their house ready faster, and the house will sell faster anyway. So we buy some time there as well. So anyway, so all of that to say is that there's there are likely a lot of questions that are going to arise. And if you're not comfortable handling them, I want you to grab the communication template. I'll put that link in the show notes again, like I said, but I also want you to understand that this isn't people devaluing what you do. So like the question of a discount, it's simply just, if we can think about it as somebody doing their due diligence, just like we probably would, we might ask that question. I just had that question asked of somebody who, I'm doing a consult for finish selections, and they wanted to know if, they get a trade discount on the items that we order. And, I was just like, that's them doing their due diligence. That's not devaluing the work that I do. It's not them trying to, not give me money. And I just answered them, and I answered them and said, I absolutely pass on a discount to you. You'll definitely get the product at a better price than you would if you went out on your own. I don't tell them that we get our price and we mark it up 35%. Actually, that is in our client agreement, but in this case, it was a consultation that I'll be providing some product recommendations, and we will absolutely mark that up 35%. So anyway, but all that to say, like, we're going to have to sit in some discomfort, maybe answering our questions. But if we can get from in this place of grounded neutrality and just be like, yeah, this is the business policy, this is the practice, and just matter of factly tell them, it's not a problem. When I think about it, my husband is a physician and he has had to deliver really difficult news to people. And we've talked about it. And he's like, I really just come from a place of neutrality and caring. And if I have to tell somebody bad news, I deliver the news as compassionately as I possibly can, but in my own mind, try to find a neutral, grounded place in which to deliver the news. And I thought, gosh, if he can do that, certainly I can answer a question about why we get paid in full upfront, and why we don't offer discounts for our services. So anyway, I hope this helps you. Again, the communication template has a lot more questions in there that you can, answer templates, as it were, for questions relating emergency D stages. If you have to charge a fee for things. And actually, I wanted to address that really quickly because it is in there. If you have a policy in which there is a fee associated for something like an emergency D stage, or you haven't been able to access a property for the D stage or a stage or something like that, one of the things I want to share with you as a business owner is that you can, especially with new people, because again, you'll have new people, you can absolutely extend some grace to that. It's a business decision that you can make on, a case by case basis. But when somebody is new to working with you, yeah, does it mean that you'll be out the money that you've paid your team? Does it mean logistically it's not optimal and, frankly sucks for some of these situations? Yeah. But what you can say is, so, emergency D stage, if you're able to do it, I would simply say something like, yes, we can absolutely accommodate that. I just want to remind you that in the client agreement that your client signed or that you signed, if it's a realtor, that we need 2 weeks notice prior to a D stage because our trucks are full or our schedule is full and we're going to be squeezing this in. There's normally a fee associated with this of X. But I'll waive that for this time since we're new to working with each other. Just so that you're aware though, for future, and just leave it at that. So, that's what I would do as a business owner. That has served me well over time to extend grace in the first instance that something happens, letting them know that I've extended them grace, and then, charging for any future times that a policy has been, not honored. It is a two-way street. It's only fair and reasonable. And I just wanted to throw that out there as one last little thing as we're talking about questions and scenarios and boundaries and all of that good stuff. So anyway, I hope this has been helpful, and I am looking forward to seeing you next week. Have a wicked good rest of yours, and I'll see you next time. Bye. Thank you so much for listening to the Staging Sips podcast. If you love what you've learned here today and you want to learn more about how to market and grow your staging business more strategically, I would love to see you join us inside of the Rethink You mentorship program. If you want more details and get on our waiting list, you can go to rethinkhomeinteriors.com/waitlist. Looking forward to seeing you in the classroom.